We are at session 5, I think, as we move through the Disciples of Christ in Community Experience. And today we're talking about the power of love. I think most of us know that English has only one word for love, whereas the Bible has 4, sometimes 5, but really 4 words in the Greek for love. You know, Eskimos have like 60 words for snow. They really know snow. So the Bible has 4 words for, you've heard these, doubtless. The first one is philos or phileo, which is more brotherly love, it's typically called. It's friendship, it's love that responds to kindness or appreciation or love from someone else. You could think of it as friendship love. Storge is, I think I didn't put them on the handout sheet. Everybody have a handout? No. If you don't have a handout, Dawn will bring you one. Storge is the love of, we could say, for a dependent, like a child. So it's the love that you have for somebody that has a sense of obligation attached. This is your blood son or daughter or whatever. So there's the love that you feel there's a certain kind of obligation that goes with it. You could call it, it's typically called motherly love. I don't want to get into why it's not called fatherly love, but you probably already know. Eros, you know this love. Eros is the word from which we get erotic love, but it's not limited in the least to sexual passion. Eros is any passion to achieve some great goal or attainment. You need eros if you're going to run for the goal, to win the medal. You need eros if you are going to write the greatest American novel. Eros is a response to some characteristic in the object of the love, something that attracts you or pleases you, and that's what's pulling that love out of you. And so there's this thing in that other person, right? This is what romantic love is about. There's just something in that thing. If you just, all popular music is about eros, right? It's just this thing that's just, you can't control it, and it's just pulling on you, and you have to be with this person, and if you don't, you're going to die, right? That's eros. And there's this thing, and of course, if this thing in the other person like goes away or fades, then what happens? Well, I don't love you anymore, because whatever was there isn't there anymore. So that's how you can kind of say to somebody, well, I don't love you anymore. So what kind of love was it? Fair enough, but what kind of love was that? That was eros, right? Because the thing disappeared. Right? Can we all say together? Eventually, the thing always disappears. So you better have something other than, if to live without eros, you just would lie in a heap on the ground, because you wouldn't get up and chase anything in your life, right? So you got to have that. But if that's the only love you have, in big trouble. Okay. So this brings us to agape love, which is the highest form of love in the Bible, and agape love is the divine form of love, because the Bible says not just God loves her, but God what? God is love. God is defined by being love, and this is the kind of love that God has. And this is love that's directed toward the preciousness of the thing that's loved. Agape, unlike eros, agape isn't triggered by the thing. It has nothing to do with the worthiness or beauty or attractiveness or pleasingness of the object of the love. It originates in the divine impulse to love, regardless of the object. So agape love can love even if the person that you're trying to love rejects you, won't return your love, is unlovable, as we might say. Agape keeps pouring out that love for that person, right? It's unconditional, we say. I think unconditional love is a way overused term. No one should ever say that they love with unconditional love. You can say you can try to, but human beings have way too many conditions. All our motives are mixed, totally, right? And unless you acknowledge that, you're not really awake and aware. So the most common word for God's love is agape. So when you read John 3:16, for God so agape the world that he gave his only son. In Matthew 5, but I say to you, agape your enemies and agape those who persecute you. Eros could never love an enemy, right? There's no thing there. In fact, it's the opposite of thing, right? It repels you. So the only way you could ever love an enemy is how? Some other kind of alien to the human love, that divine, that somehow infuses your heart, and you can extend love to somebody else. So this is the way God loves us, and it's the way God commands us to love others. Christians have a crystal clear mandate to love with agape love. At the Last Supper, which we celebrate on Maundy, Thursday, right? Jesus puts a towel around his waist. He gets down. He washes the feet of his disciples. And he says, "I give you a new commandment." That mandatum, or I give you a new mandate. That's where Maundy comes from. Thursday. It's Mandate Thursday. Maundy Thursday is Mandate Thursday, and the mandate is to love one another as I have loved you. The way I get down as a servant, as a slave, and wash your feet. That's what you're supposed to do for each other. Okay? So now how do you feel about being commanded to love?
I think it's a great idea.
It's a great idea. Great idea. I'm not talking about your head, I'm talking about your heart. How do you feel?
Oh, sorry.
It's great. Is it great, right? You can't command me to love you. If I don't love you, you can't command me to love you, right? Well, the reason agape love can be commanded is because it's not a feeling.
That's right.
Feelings are great. Feelings often attend our love. But our feelings are fickle, right? So they come and go. And if you are loved by somebody, you hope to be loved with, if the feeling is there, that's great. And the feeling's not here, they're still going to love you. It's great when the feeling's there, but it's not based on the feeling alone. Agape love goes to a deeper level of motivation. It's deeper than your feelings. It's an act of your will. I think I put it on the first bullet on this sheet. Did you get a sheet? So Dawn, maybe we could get Carolyn a sheet.
David, didn't the people in the book of Acts practice agape love?
Yes, in fact, they would have what they call agape feasts, which is the forerunner of the Eucharist, which was the love. Moravians still have it's called a love feast, right? Mm-hmm. So this agape is a motivation to extend your will, to offer love to somebody, whether you feel it or not is not important. Okay. So agape love, we could define it this way. Agape seeks to respond to the other, whoever you're loving, right? The other person's legitimate needs, without the motive of having to get your own needs met at the same time. Do you know what it's like to be loved by somebody who they're loving you, but you know that really their needs are all kind of wrapped around this axle too, and they say they really love you, and but it's they need to kind of get their needs scratched as well, and that's okay because we're all that way, right? Let's just be honest and say every one of us has. I've already said it, but I'll say it again, right? We all have mixed motives. Nobody can love with unconditional love. were just full of conditions, right? If you really loved me, and so on and so forth. So agape seeks to love without needing to have your own needs met at the same time. So let's be clear, we all have legitimate needs for love. Okay? So we're going to talk in a minute about how if you're an agape person, or you want to be, you seek to be, then it's important for you to make sure that your legitimate needs are getting met in a healthy and strong way so that you can love other people. Right? And when you're trying to love other people and you're feeling exhausted and wiped out and taken advantage of, what do you know? Well, either you know you're a parent of a small child, and that just goes without saying, right? But if this is happening with other adults in your life, then what do you know? Then you're in a normal family. Okay, that's the thing you know. And it's Thanksgiving. Right? So let's talk about meeting the legitimate needs of the other person. That's really important, right? So you seek to meet the legitimate needs of this other person, and the legitimate needs aren't what the other person desires necessarily. So if a 16-year-old kid says to you, I really, really want to go on this, cross-country road trip with my friends, and this will be the highlight of my entire life, and you say no, and you're like, right? So, or if an addict says to you, I want or need, this thing, most of the time, right, with somebody who's addicted, the only way we can love them is to go athwart of their desires. That's the most loving thing we can do, right? So we seek to meet the legitimate needs of other people, but it doesn't mean that we meet all their desires. It doesn't mean that we solve all their problems or fix their lives, right? So a lot of people will kind of like hook onto you. And, if you really love me, you'll take care of this need I have, or, you'll make sure that I have X, or, right? Go home and Google Friedman's Fables, The Bridge. I don't have time to read it today, but it's a wonderful fable about somebody who jumps over a bridge and is hanging by a thread, and then you catch them, and they're saying, all right, now you need to save me. Well, can you try to cross? No, I really can't do that, but well, do you think you could? No, I don't think I could do that, but there's this whole long fable, beautiful fable that only Ed Friedman could do to say, how do you deal with a situation where someone is saying, if you love me, even though they're not willing to do anything to help themselves. Okay? Friedman's Fables, The Bridge. You can look it up. So we're not called to be doormats, it says on your list. I mentioned a minute ago, if you're feeling exhausted and taken advantage of, then you know that you're not loving with agape love. You're just loving with eros love, and your tank is empty and you're out of gas. And you're not connected to the source of love that, because very often when we're trying to love people, we want to be the star lover, right? And we want to be the star person. And so I want to fix your problems. I want to solve your problems. I want to make you dependent on me. And I want to be able to meet all these needs so that you'll think I'm, your God or your goddess. So all of our needs get wrapped up in this, right? So but when we're loving people with agape love, then we're able simply to offer what we have, small though it is, and beautifully, that's enough, huh? So what we can offer is constancy. Remember we talked about the steadfast love of the Lord. Hesed was that Hebrew word for the steadfast love of the Lord that never fails. It doesn't mean in the history of the Hebrew people that they never had problems or difficulties or suffering, because they did. But God said, through it all, I will not leave you or forsake you. Well, the reason this agape love is so rare and so beautiful is it's because it's the one thing that everybody needs and wants more than anything. That everybody needs to be loved. Everybody needs to be wanted. Needs to be affirmed for who they are. Everybody needs to be accepted. Those are just basic human needs. They are as important as food and water and shelter. How do we know this? Remember those famous or infamous sort of studies in the 1930s in orphanages where little infants had everything they needed to survive. They had food and formula and milk and a warm place to sleep and everything, but they were dying, because why? Right, because nobody touched them. You all know this. Nobody, you die without touch, without affirmation, without love, without intimacy. So we're talking about a basic human need here. The problem is, and you knew there was a problem, is that when we don't get our basic needs met in the way that we insist they get met, you know what I'm saying? Because part of the mature journey of life is finding out that your needs are met kind of in sort of the opposite way that you thought they needed to be met, right? And all the things you thought were like ultimate and important and the thing without which you could not live, actually, no. That what you really needed was something else. Okay? So, the reason it can get difficult is because if people's legitimate needs for love and affirmation and acceptance and all these things aren't met in the way they think they're supposed to be met, then I try to get my needs met in other ways that are often really difficult or even self-destructive. But long before they become self-destructive and all that, they can just lead me down a path that's not going to take me to the love and affirmation that I really want. So if I'm not happy with the person that I am, so I have to conform to whatever other people are doing or thinking, or because if I do, then people will like me or affirm me, or I don't really look good enough, so I need to wear different clothes, or so that people will think I'm pretty, or so people will think I'm handsome, so that I'll be that thing for somebody's eros love, because I need that and somebody else, right? So how can I be the thing that someone's going to want? Plenty of people follow a whole career because that's what's going to be successful to them, right? And they're by the time they're in their 50s or 60s, they're a world away from who they really were meant to be, but they've spent their whole life chasing after something. So now, if you try to love this person out here in Pluto, way away from what, and it can be difficult, right? Because their sense of what they need to be loved or accepted and affirmed, it's going to be hard to give, isn't it? So what we have to come to understand if we're going to give people this kind of divine love in the only limited way we can do it is to understand that there's this place of emptiness and deep need in every person, and we can try to fill that big kind of emptiness with all kinds of things or experiences. You can try to fill that. You know that famous saying that there's a God-sized hole in every person, and only God can fill that. So you can throw the perfect husband or wife into that hole, and it just, and the perfect career, and the perfect children, and the perfect house, and fame and all this sort of stuff, and what happens? It just like you hear a clink at the bottom of this endless well. It just can't be filled. Huh? So I put this Carl Rogers quote on your, Carl Rogers was a very famous, he gave his name to the whole Rogerian school of therapy. And he said, I hate to read this, but it's just true. If I were to search for the central core of difficulty in people as I have come to know them, it is that in the great majority of cases, they despise themselves, regarding themselves as worthless, unlovable. Right? So, and that's me, right? And that's you. But we all have that sense that that deep, empty place in ourselves hasn't been filled. So if you're going to love with agape love, you need to understand that's me, and that's everybody I see. And so when I see people that are difficult or problematic or acting out or whatever, then I know, even though I want to, I just, hit them or, disown them or say, I hate you and get out of my life. You understand, okay, that big empty place is really empty in this person, right? So, if you have an out of control child is having a tantrum and they're hitting you and thrashing around, so what do you do with this child? You don't hit them. You don't yell. Yes, Marty's doing it. You hold this child until, right, till you absorb all of the, because obviously this child is anxious or, is up against something confusing. They don't know how to, right? So that works with adults too, right? So a few days ago, I was in a funk and nothing was working out. I think I was on hold with the cable company for about 30 minutes and I got cut off. And I was supposed to write a piece for the weekly email, and I had, it was due in about an hour, and I had no idea what that was. And so, so I came down and I didn't have time to have lunch, and so I said, no, I don't want lunch. And Pam was like, well, what do you mean? Like, because I don't have time for lunch. I've got to go. And she's, so, so she said, wow, you're really being a jerk, aren't you, today? Right? But what I loved about it was she was just saying it in a totally non-judgmental way, just to say, look at yourself. Aren't you just amusing? And all of your importance about the things that you have to do, right? So that was a little piece of agape love for someone just to say, stop. That's her way of just holding me, the tantrum child, as it were, huh? So to love with agape love, we have to recognize that all this fearful, anxious stuff that we experience in other people is just that, right? And we have to know that empty place in ourselves and in other people. And ultimately, we have to realize that the way that we get our needs met, is not by getting our needs met, right? It's by the way I fill an empty place is to follow Jesus' example in Philippians chapter 2, where he had all of glory and all of heaven, and he emptied himself, kenosis, he emptied himself, and then God highly exalted him and gave him a name which is above every name. So we find that, in serving other people, we're actually happier And we find that, you know, in emptying my life, I'm actually filled. Carl Jung and then Henry Nouwen talked about the wounded healer, that the only person who can really be a healer to you is somebody who has the same wound in themselves. And in fact, the healing power doesn't come from this place of wholeness and perfection, but, you know, now let me heal you. But it comes from the place of Jesus with the 5 wounds. That's the person who can heal you, is the person who's wounded and knows it, and who has given himself over to this healing love. Because nobody wants to be healed by a pure or perfect person. Right? This is what somebody needs to tell Roy Moore. Right? Here's somebody who, right, who's a professional Christian, you know. He actually autographs the Bible as if he wrote it, you know. He actually autographs the Bible for people, right? Well, you know where that takes you ultimately, right? You can only abuse other people if you actually think you're God and that you're perfect. So the only way we're going to heal or be agape with people is to recognize how wounded we are in ourselves, how healed we are by the grace and mercy and love of God, and then in our own little simple and limited way, we can offer that love to other people. So that's what I want you to talk about in your groups today. Just where have you experienced that kind of love, even partially? Where have you maybe offered that love to somebody, partially? And how you could kind of live in that place more. Okay? Okay, go do it.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's very good. Yeah, exactly.